Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be back this morning with Teaching Bites Tuesdays and Thursdays with Dr. Monceaux. Today, we're talking about another aspect of teaching reading. Today, we're going to talk about vocabulary, and vocabulary is this huge, vastly important aspect of, of teaching reading or for language acquisition. And so, without vocabulary, we don't have anything. There's no language, right? So this is a really big deal. And let's see. Well, reading vocabulary improves reading comprehension. Researchers showed that teachers need to understand 98% of the words they read to understand what they're reading. So improving vocabulary skills will improve their understanding of novels and textbooks. Second, it's important for language development. Children who develop a richer vocabulary tend to be deeper thinkers. They express themselves better and read more. Improving language and literacy skills early in life will help them be more successful academically and communicatively. Another reason why we need to really work on vocabulary is it helps us communicate ideas. Successful communication or saying what you mean is dependent on a good vocabulary base. Using the right words when talking makes you a more effective communicator. Not only speaking, vocabulary allows us to express ourselves better in writing. So having a good vocabulary to draw from can help you write more effectively. Students need to use more formal tone when writing, not conversational language. And to do that, they need a richer vocabulary to tap into those words we don't often use when we speak. Additionally, vocabulary is a benchmark for occupational success. Researcher Joseph O'Connor found that a person's vocabulary level is the best single predictor of occupational success. Success in the workplace depends on your communication skills. So, today's topic, vocabulary and context, is critical. This topic could be looked at in reading, but it also could be looked at in a listening class. But today we're going to think about it more on a reading basis and how vocabulary and context helps us with reading. So teaching vocabulary really has two approaches. We can think about the denotative or we can talk about the connotative. Last week we talked about denotative. We looked at teaching the dictionary, how to use the dictionary, how to find meaning from words in the dictionary. This is a denotative approach, and that's good. Um, it's necessary. You've got to have a place to start, and so often when we begin working with students, we teach them to use the dictionary. But as students advance, we want them to be able to pull meaning from the context or from what they're reading. And so this is the connotative meaning, and it's more evocative, it's a richer way of teaching the language. And so this becomes really important when we encounter words with multiple meanings, right? In English, but in every language, so many words have um, so many meanings. Think about simple words such as arm. I have an ant bite on my arm. Or it's important to arm yourself with a solid education. Arm has these multiple meanings. You may think of some others, right? What about bark? I hope our dog doesn't bark when I knock on the door. Here we're talking about an animal. Or the tree bark is rough to the touch. So now we're talking about the external side of a plant. Or I love eating pretzels covered with almond bark. What is almond bark? Well, this is the chocolate, right? That you dip pretzels in to make them tasty. There's so much difference there. What about another simple word? Clip. I enjoy watching a clip from that video. Right? My mother is going to clip my hair. The boat is moving at a fairly fast clip. So again, we have three different meanings for a simple word. But if the student doesn't understand these meanings in the context and in the setting there immediately, well then the meaning is destroyed. So, so let's look at, today we can look at 4 different ways of kind of pulling out context and thinking about, okay, there is contextual meaning. How can we get to that contextual meaning? And I like to think of 4 processes. We can look at 4 context clues. We can look at examples, we can look at synonyms, we can look for antonyms, or we can look at the general sense of the meaning. So these start from perhaps the easiest and go to the more difficult. The example tends to move us from a concrete object to something more abstract. And, and we can look for signals such as like, or such as, or for instance, within the sentence to understand where the examples are. Let me give you a sentence. Perhaps a man and woman are on a date, and the woman says to the man, "You have a 30-year mortgage, a 5-year car lease, and a lifetime gym membership, but you're afraid of commitment." Now, the difficult word here is commitment. And a student may say, well, what is commitment? But we have 3 examples of commitment. We have a 30-year mortgage, we have a 5-year car lease, and a lifetime gym membership. And so it's clear that the man has committed himself to some things, but he's not willing to commit himself to the woman. Commitment. Another thing, let's look at another example. Assets such as good health, a loving family, and an enjoyable job make life rewarding. So the difficult word here is probably assets. What are the examples? How many examples do we have, and what are they in the sentence? Let me read the sentence again. Assets such as good health, a loving family, and an enjoyable job make life rewarding. Yeah, you got it. There's 3 examples. Good health is an example of an asset. A loving family is an example of another asset. And an enjoyable job is a third example of an asset. And these are perhaps not things that we often think of as an asset, but in fact, those are assets. So examples can be a powerful way for us to stay within the text and understand exactly what the author is trying to present to us in more quickly, in a richer way. The next context clue that we can think about is synonyms. Now, synonyms offer a different word with a similar meaning. And so this creates a connection to the word family, and we can look for kind of a repetition. Generally, there's one sentence with the word that's difficult, and then the simpler word is in the next sentence. Let's think about some examples here. So Julia was nervous about answering the detective's queries. Why was he asking so many questions anyways? The difficult word here is queries. The student may ask, well, what is a query? So we could go into the next phrase, the next sentence, and think, what is the related word? How are these 2 phrases or these 2 sentences stacked? And so we see questions, right, relates to queries. And so because of this, we can understand that a query is a question. Let's try another one. Hal was a mediocre student. He was an average baseball player as well. So mediocre is a difficult word here. What would our synonym be? That's right, average. Average is our synonym. So good. So synonyms are generally layered. We get a difficult word in one sentence or phrase, and in the following sentence or phrase, we get a simpler word. And this is just kind of a natural way that speakers use or writers use to make sure that their ideas are conveyed. And they do it through kind of a redundancy or a repetition. A third context clue, or third process that we could use to help readers learn how to get vocabulary or extrapolate meaning or pull meaning from a context, is antonyms. Now, you may know an antonym is a word with a near opposite meaning. It doesn't always have to be exactly opposite, but it's headed in the other direction. Signal, generally we look for signal words such as unlike, but, however, instead of, in, in contrast, etc. We're looking for words that create a contrast here, right? So let's look at an example. Most of my history teachers' lectures were tedious, but the one that really happened on Paul Revere's famous ride was very interesting. So we want to look for the contrast. We have two sentences here, basically. We have a but, so we see that there is a contrast. And the difficult word is tedious. So what is a word that shows contrast to tedious? That would be interesting. So interesting is the opposite of tedious. And so we can understand what tedious means because it may mean slow or uninteresting or boring. All right? Let's look at another example. Before the kids, we had nothing to do. Now we're overwhelmed. Here, the difficult word may be overwhelmed. Do we have any contrast? There's not a word that shows contrast here, but the implied contrast is the but that comes between the two sentences, or the however, right? And so here there's an implied contrast, and we can compare overwhelmed to nothing to do. The last context clue that we can use to kind of process what's going on within a reading is to look at a general sense of the passage. I think this is the more difficult one to kind of work through. Generally the more difficult one to kind of work through, and generally to get it, you just have to guess. You have to look at what's going on in the word and figure out what's going on in the passage and just dive in. You take out your magic ball, you look at the stars, you just kind of try to figure it out. This is just kind of a blunt force type thing, but it's possible. Let's look at some examples. Elena thought she had ample time to review her notes before the afternoon exam. Then she discovered her watch was incorrect. She was actually late for the test. And so here we can see a contrast at work. She thought she had ample time, but so we're looking for something that may show a contrast. And so ample being the difficult word means that she has plenty of time, and we can see that because she's actually late, which is not enough time. And so finding the contrast, while it's not exactly there, not written, we can guess that ample means that she thought she had plenty of time, or ample means plenty. Another example is, as a consequence of his bad report card, my brother could not watch TV until his grades improved. So here the difficult word would be consequence. And so we want to think about, well, what is a consequence? And how do we help students figure out what a consequence is? So in the sentence, as a consequence of his bad report card, my brother could not watch TV until his grades improved. We would look at consequence and think, well, consequence, this sentence has a result attached to it. And because there's a result, then consequence means result, right? And so we can analyze the sentence for the relationships within them to help us to produce more meaning. So why would you use context clues? It saves time. This is really critical in teaching reading. When a student is reading, if they stop at every word that they don't know and they go into the dictionary to try to figure it out, they lose their train of thought and it stops their process. They forget what the text is saying. They forget what they've read. They lose all the energy or the impetus of the text. And so if they're looking for words in context, then it allows them to think about exactly what's going on in the text. It pulls them deeper into the text. Um, and the students can learn more. Students can also focus more deeply about the reading because they're able to pull from the reading and they're able to comprehend the reading. And so they're going deeper into the text to understand things better. This causes them to practice their comprehension. And so, again, you're using context clues enables a student to dig into the text and figure things out and learn quicker to read. Well, so this is all we have about vocabulary in context. If there's any questions, we'll talk about those questions at this time. Okay, well, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you giving up a few minutes of your morning with us, and we look forward to seeing you Thursday. Have a good day.